Hello friends, welcome to the EduSat Network. Today we are going to talk about medicine in ancient India, and this is part of our series and continuing from yesterday where we talked about 19th and 20th century developments in the field, and today we will focus on the actual developments of Ayurveda in the past, its cultural and non-medicinal aspects as well. And for this discussion we have with us in the studio the same subject expert, Dr. Shankar Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of History, Hindu College, University of Delhi. He has been a Vice Chancellor's Fellow at the same university, and in addition to that I would like to tell you that his doctoral research is on ancient Indian medicine, so he will definitely have a greater grasp on the subject, and we are quite privileged to have him here with us. So let us welcome sir and request him to begin our today's lecture.
Thank you, Urvashi, and good morning viewers. We have been discussing ancient Indian medicine. Last discussion was primarily on the new avatar in which Ayurveda appears to us today in the 21st century, and yesterday's discussion primarily focused on the constraints, the colonial constraints in which Ayurveda had to push itself through, and the pressure, tremendous commercial pressure that it had to negotiate with in the 19th and early 20th century. So all through these constraints and these concerns, Ayurveda happened to somewhat reinvent itself, not essentially by doing new researches or by adding new, you can say, scientific element to it, but it was a kind of rediscovery in the sense, since we discussed yesterday the kind of renaissance that it underwent. And in the process, what happened is that several inconsistencies of Ayurveda from the point of view of its scientificity, because the scientific tinge was the buzzword and continues to be the buzzword, and therefore the inconsistencies in the original treatises of Charak, Shushruta and Vagbhat and several other Ayurvedic texts, they were sought to be weaned away, and only the scientific looking element were retained, and some kind of a vocabularial changes were also made, and it bore, you can say, pretense of being extremely scientific, precise, almost tailored to the requirements of Western medicinal values and ethics and so forth. The portable element of the medicines, the way pharmacies were established, journals started being floated, and the way advertisements were put across. So it also tried to capture the market that it thought was fast losing to the triumphant march of Western medicine. So this was what we discussed yesterday. And today's discussion will be a follow-up of our yesterday's discussion, because through yesterday's discussion we did establish that this sanitized version of or the sanitized outlook and image of Ayurveda that we have perhaps might not be the appropriate entry point for us to investigate and explore the way Ayurveda or ancient medicine actually developed in India. And it is in this process that we will discover the social and cultural pertinence or even religious pertinence to the development of Ayurveda, which seemingly is, of course, a treatise on medicine, and it is about physical well-being and longevity and so forth. But there are several other concerns also informing and influencing the growth and development, or in fact we can say arrested growth and development at several points of time in history. and that is where the cultural factors become important, and that's why I had to somewhat convince Urvashi to slot it in the art and culture section of the discussion. And let's now understand that concern for physical well-being and health is something which is seen in almost every societies in past. So if we start thinking of the earliest civilized lifestyles in Indian past, and we begin from, say, Harappan times, of course, in the absence of any written record, it is very difficult to ascertain what was the state of things and who were the medicine men or healers, or how health was actually looked after, except from the fact that the archaeological remains that we have, the extensive town planning and very overt concern for hygiene with respect to ducts and channels for the exit of used water and so forth. Of course, that does tell us that there could have been a fair bit of concern for health and well-being in the Harappan times. And apart from that, even some of the seals and sealings that we have, the impressions on that, for instance, what we today know as Pashupati seal, does show quite a few animals and entities which could be regarded something akin to some shamanic tradition, some ascetic aspect of medicinal past, which we would discover in our today's discussion was so important. But apart from that magico-religious kind of environment in which medicine and health was practiced and looked after, we can't say much about the Harappan times. Some of the perforated jars which have been discovered could have been used. We don't know the actual usage, but these are the propositions put across by various historians and archaeologists. It could have been associated with some kind of healing or shamanic traditions. So these are some of the artifacts which can be looked at with reference to medicinal past of India. But as we move across in time, further in history, closer to the present times, of course, we find the Rigvedic period, and in Rigved, of course, there are quite a few hymns associated with well-being, health issues, and propitiating some specific gods for bringing about good health and prosperity and so forth, or warding off diseases. But again, there is no systematic, devoted, exclusive account of medicinal past or health or healing as such in Rigved. They are all ensconced in, we can say, overall what Kenneth Zayas refers to as magico-religious traditions, magico-religious environment. So till Rigvedic times, we don't find anything very systematically done or which even gives some semblance of epistemic foundation of medical knowledge as such. Subsequent to the Rigvedic period, we find in Atharva Ved, which of course is part of the Vedic tradition, but Atharva Ved has some kind of an individuality for itself with respect to other three Vedas. And here we encounter numerous references of health issues, diseases with their distinct names, some of the worms which cause disease, even classification, rudimentary initial classification, taxonomy of diseases on the basis of symptoms. And we will come to this as we trace the growth and development, or so to say the history of the epistemology of medicine, which elaborated itself subsequently in the form of Charak Samhita, Sushrut Samhita, and so forth, the classics, or in the works of the big three, Charak, Sushrut, and Vagbhat of Ayurveda, or the name itself. Now, in Atharva Veda, there are also several gods associated with healing traditions. For instance, Ashwin is one such god. There are several other healing qualities or healing power associated with several other gods also, but that is tangential kind of a reference. For instance, Surya, Agni, even Indra, they are also at times referred to as having endowed with the power of a Bhisaj. Bhisaj is the word used for a medicinal healer who usually was a male. So that's the identity for someone who cured people from diseases. Another important thing in Atharva Veda is the fact that apart from these references, it has a rich data of materia medica, or we can say some of the plants and herbs which are of medicinal importance. They are reasonably well described or referred to in Atharva Veda. But despite all these references, despite richness of the medicinal data, what it suffers from, I'm talking of Atharva Veda, is that all this data is scattered across the 20 books of Atharva Veda. So there is no separate, distinct, systematized account emerging even in Atharva Veda, although that is very rich in terms of medicinal data or healing practices. So even in Atharva Veda, despite this richness of medicinal data, the systematized account of health or the philosophy behind it cannot be discerned. It could not separate itself from the overall tradition in which Atharva Veda was still very much anchored to. And therefore, we cannot even locate the epistemic origin of medicinal practices or healing in Atharva Veda either. So that is something very important for us to keep track of. However, there are some initial traces of, you can say, secular classificatory techniques, taxonomical principles, which do get deployed in Atharva Veda with reference to medicinal values, data, and causal factors and so forth. One such is the way in which Atharva Veda classifies some of the diseases. For instance, one criteria that is used is on the basis of the symptoms. So there is one set of diseases which has been classified as one set because its symptoms are manifest. That is, its symptoms of such diseases are out there to be seen, visible to anyone. And these kinds of diseases are said to be, of course, it's not explode to the extreme point, but they are believed to be having separate set of causal factors. And another set of diseases is that of those which are not showing external symptoms. So their symptoms are not manifest. So such diseases are classified as separate set of diseases in Atharvaved, and their causal factor is attributed to something which is which could be malevolent force or demonic force and so forth. Whereas those with external symptoms can be cured through application of herbs or through external interventions. So this is something which is interesting, and it emerges from our discussion that such inklings, such beginnings were already made during the Atharvavedic period. Now, also important is the fact that when you look at the growth of ancient Indian medicine or the prohibiting factors or the conducive factors, of course, through this inkling towards secular classification, we can kind of trace some of the initial sparks here, and why it could not fructify, why it could not move directly to a very systematized epistemology of medicine or etiological elaborations, the way we find in classical treatises of Charak and Shushruta. Then we find that there is the constraint of the overall magico-religious tradition in which it is still rooted, in which it is still anchored, and kind of sheer inability of these initial medicinal traditions to come out of it. That's where social and cultural factors become extremely important. We have referred to Visaj in Vedic tradition, and in Atharvaved we find that the social position of Visaj, and this is brilliantly brought out by the researches by Kenneth Zayas, who has spoken about, who has written about the homologization of medicinal and sacrificial details in Atharvaved, where he talks of some plants and the role of the Visaj in which kind of combines the medicinal as well as sacrificial roles that they have to perform. And these Visaj, who are somewhat socialized with the idea of administering medicine or healing traditions, also are well versed in Vedic hymns. Yet it appears from the account of Atharvaved and other contemporary texts that Visaj who practiced healing were not accorded the status of a Brahmin or the exalted status of a Brahmin who performed sacrifices. So Brahmins in Vedas who are performing sacrifices are having very socially exalted position vis-a-vis a Visaj who is aware of Vedic chants and Vedic mantras. At times he has to make use of it, but the overall context is sacrificial, magico-religious, and that is not allowing the Visaj to come out of it. Rather, the Visaj is in some kind of a tension to approximate his social status to that of a Brahmin. So there is accentuation on the sacrificial, magico-religious component of his craft rather than empirical oriented medicinal traits or medicinal skills. This is something which perhaps can be attributed as one factor which inhibited the Atharvedic corpus of medicinal data or Atharvedic medical traditions to graduate into some kind of a systematized foray into medicinal ethics or something which could have led to emergence of medicine as a separate systematized body of knowledge and so forth, which subsequently happened, but it took time and it had to take a different route altogether. Here, the role of some ascetics who roamed around as part of Indian philosophy. We all are aware of the value accorded to asceticism in India's past, in Vedic and post-Vedic past, and the meditative aspect of their lifestyle, wandering aspect of their lifestyle, and also the fact that they had to sustain themselves on their own. Therefore, they were aware of the vegetative and so to say floral and faunal environment around them, and that's how whenever they fell ill or they had some discomfort, bodily discomfort, they resorted to some herbs, they resorted to some practices which over a period of time got systematized subsequently through the Buddhist institutions, Sangha, monasteries and so forth, and subsequently got systematized and elaborated in these treatises. The works of Kenneth Zayas that I earlier quoted is something which is extremely important in this context, and he has brought this out rather clearly that the ascetic tradition reminds us or tells us about the possible route through which this history or systematization of medicinal knowledge could have actually happened. There are concrete evidence to this effect, but before we get into the evidence part of it, let's also pause and ponder over something which can also be of critical importance here in our understanding of Ayurveda, the way it evolved. Now, all of us know, anyone who is aware of Ayurvedic doctrine would definitely agree that there are quite a few principles associated with the craft, and it's not so easy to identify one central principle of Ayurveda. Nevertheless, of the few important ones, one can cite two issues. One is that the typology of people afflicted with a particular kind of disease and administering of medicine to these people have some kind of a basis in Ayurveda. For instance, there is this classification of Jangal and Anup. These are bipolar entities. Jangal stands for dry kind of a climate, dry kind of a situation, and Anup refers to wet situation where water is available in abundance. There is muddy or you can say dal kind of an area. So that's the ecological stretch, bipolar stretch that Ayurveda repeatedly keeps talking of, and in fact it classifies people on the basis of these two ecological entities, and also the medicine that has to be delivered. Similarly, the three dosh, guna, three dosh that is which is very central to Ayurveda, Kapha, Vata and Pitta. Now, all these three are present in human beings in a particular proportion, and some kind of an equilibrium is to be established for healthy well-being of that person. The moment that equilibrium is disturbed, ruptured, diseases make themselves manifest in some way or the other, and depending on the nature of the diseased person, whether he or she comes from Anup area or what is the mool prakriti of that person, and these components Vat, Pitta and Kapha will vary. These are variables which will vary according to the locational situation of Anup or jungle. So dry, wet, all these are some of the variables which are very central to Ayurvedic therapy and principles. So this is one. And of course, there are quite a few that we shall be talking about. What I want you to think about is that in the Atharva Vedic and contemporary traditions, we find a critical word called charins, Vaidya charins or charan Vaidyas. Of course, Vaidyas we all know are associated with healing and of course also with worship and so forth, but they are charins, and charins here refers to roving physicians. So charan Vaidyas are roving physicians who keep moving, and that's the general picture that we get of earliest practitioners of medicine. So they were like moving around the streets of a city or of an area of an habitation, asking for some kind of a medical intervention. So it were like moving, physicians. Now that also tells us about the degraded social condition of a physician in ancient India, and that is something which was yet another inhibiting factor, because no one would want to be associated with such professions unless it gave some kind of an exalted social status to them. So these are some of the social factors, but what I was referring to is this word charan Vaidyas, and the root word for this charan is char in Sanskrit. As a verb, this word has twin connotation. In one sense, it is to move around, which is in objective sense of the term. Another sense, which is subjective sense of the term char, is to eat, to consume something. So char in Sanskrit would connote two things. One is when the area in which you move around, vicharan kind of thing, and the other is chara, what you eat, right, and what you consume. It is this twin connotation of the word which is critical to the taxonomical principles of Anup and jungle, dry and wet, that we talked about. See, the basic philosophy here is, in Ayurveda, is that if you live in an area and consume food from the immediate environment around it, including the floral and faunal component of your food, so plants and animals that occur in an area in natural conditions, generally it is believed that people would consume that. And as a result of consumption, as a result of having such food, you develop certain traits in your body. And that will determine whether you are prone to discomfort of Vayu or Pitta or Kapha or whatever, right? So basic thing here is that it is what we eat that permeates into our tissues and make us vulnerable or prone to some of the symptoms or diseases. And since health is about establishing equilibrium of these variables, Vat, Kaph and Pitta, therefore, it requires some bit of intervention, extra administration of the opposite. So, if you are in wet area, you require some intervention from dry area food just to establish that, just to maintain that equilibrium. And this is something which can best be captured through this word char, twin connotation. So, it means the ecological surroundings which gives you, which nourishes you as a human being, in which you take food, from where you take food, the kinds of the variety, vegetational variety and faunal variety, and at the same time it also constitutes food consumption, right. So, movement or the area in which you live and consumption, they both go together to constitute one of the basic philosophies of Ayurveda in subsequent times. Of course, these things are some kind of an assessment in retrospect. These texts, later Vedic texts, don't elaborate so much, but the subsequently emerging treatises on Ayurveda does so. And that's how historians have looked at some kind of possible connection between the two. And of course, the ascetic tradition has been established as one of the contributing, very important contributing factor in kind of inseminating these ideas into the pharmacopoeia or the epistemology of Ayurveda, which subsequently emerged in the 6th century BC and subsequent period, particularly towards the beginning of the Common Era, when these accounts, when these traditions coming from diverse sections were probably compiled and given a very sophisticated, epistemologically sophisticated outlook in these treatises. So this is something that I wanted to you to be aware of. And apart from that, if you look at the monastic traditions and the accounts, the practices which were prevalent in these monastery or other institutions associated with ascetic Buddhism, you will find that quite a substantial portion of the pharmacopoeia or the materia medica of Ayurveda has already been anticipated. So, the Pitak texts do give us a detailed classified accounts of several herbs, several things which were to be administered, foods which were to be administered to ailing people, showing different symptoms, and they enter into Ayurvedic treatises, classical Ayurvedic treatises of Charak and Shushruta, even several other practices which were institutionalized actually belong to this very period and this very tradition. And therefore, the point that we are making here is that what we understand as Ayurveda through the systematized account of Charak and Shushruta is actually in all probability a compilation of diverse healing and medical traditions which existed prior to their being written. And it is a compilation of several such traditions, and therefore quite a few inconsistencies also are to be seen in this, because it is coming from different traditions, and that's how it evolved. That seems to be the historical process of its evolution. And we just spoke of the central principle, but several social prejudices, and that's where social and cultural comes into picture. Several social prejudices also enter into this. Although this is about medicine and a systematized exclusive account of medicine now in Charak Samhita and Sushruta Samhita, but it is not completely free from the social and cultural prejudices. Today you can identify these prejudices with reference to gender, with reference to several other purity, pollution notions. For instance, in the classification of water, it is argued that in the classical treatises, Charak and Sushruta, that water which is very swift is light. In Ayurveda, there is a lot of emphasis on the food which is light, food which is heavy, and all sorts of things. So, a river which originates from a hill, probably Himalayas, and moves towards dry area, that is jungle area, and here one can refer to Sindhu Nadi or Indus River, and a river which emerges from the mountains, from heights, from parvats, but moves eastward and hence to Bengal, Bihar area, which is more marshy, more wet as compared to Rajasthan area or Punjab, Haryana area. Therefore, there is an intrinsic sense of superiority of the former over the latter. So that has to be settled here. So something which is very substantial is being argued here, but it gets enmeshed in the purity pollution notion, and one sees some very interesting facts in 12th century, 13th century commentaries on these treatises, on these texts. We find some kind of a sense of unease because by this time Ganga is established as a very pure, pious river. There is religiosity and faith associated with it. So one has to reconcile this substantive point which has been made to the contrary. So these are some of the inconsistencies that we discover that with respect to time have crept in an otherwise very exclusive medicinal text like Charak Samhita and Sushruta Samhita. Similarly, some explanation for what constitutes the essence of life and essence of energy and so forth. The discourse tells us that essentially it is the virya, the semen, which is the ultimate source of energy or life. And if that is so, how do you explain it with respect to females? And such issues, of course, in subsequent commentaries, much later than the times when Charak and Sushruta wrote. So these issues are taken up for discussion, and there is, of course, some kind of contradiction which is very much apparent, and so forth. Similarly, talking of the ascetic traditions and the emerging medicinal traditions and practices, human anatomy, which is again of central importance to any medicinal practice or healing practice, is something which probably developed in the ascetic traditions of Buddhism, where the monks were, the wandering monks were asked to look at dead corpses for continuously without the drop of eyelid for a long duration of time, and they had to see this decaying. The idea was not something to do with medicine. The context was just to develop concentration and insight into the futility of life. that look what happens to a dead body, this is what happens to life and so forth, which is part of Buddhist philosophy, just to develop a sense of detachment from the concerns of everyday concerns of life and so forth. But during the process, since they kept seeing a dead corpse decaying over water or over land, some kind of an idea about human anatomy with some sense of exactitude. This is something very similar to the Renaissance times, when in Europe we find the painters and sculptors dissecting dead bodies just to understand the muscular formations and the muscular structures and the veins and arteries, so that they can very graphically depict it in their creations, be it art or sculpture, so as to make a very real kind of a sculpture, something which is exactly like a human being. So these empirical foundations were laid in the social, cultural and religious traditions of ancient India, in the ascetic traditions, and subsequently it got compiled into a systematized account. And at the same time, since it was written in Sanskrit, in the Brahmanic tradition, with fair degree of Vedic affiliation, so other religious factors of purity, pollution, gender bias, and quite a few other Brahmanical notions of superiority, inferiority, they also seeped into, they also permeated the thought processes which otherwise could have constituted a very rich development of medicinal practices. And this is something that we should not be seeing with some kind of a disdain, because it is not entirely empirical, or there is no extra accentuation of something being extremely detached, although there are quite a few references to that also. But the residues of inconsistent past and cultural and social and religious thoughts informing the development of medicinal practice or healing practice in India's past are also quite apparent. And that is why probably I had to try extra hard with Urvashi to slot this in art and culture section, because generally when we look at medicinal past, we look at with the prism of what constitutes today as pure medicine or pure science. But if you look at the historical anchorage of such traditions, you find that it had to negotiate with several things, and several things beyond the discipline of medicine also, and that is how it evolved, and that's the perspective that we can have, that's the insight that we can have through history about Indian medicine.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for talking in a very descriptive manner and also with a lot of examples, and so talking in depth about Ayurveda. And with this, we would like to thank sir for being here and sparing his valuable time, and thank all the viewers. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.